o'clock.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining our meeting this evening. Hope everyone is staying safe out there. We'll begin our open session this evening with approval of the agenda. Any additions or deletions? Hearing none, do we have any?
There's,
Under unfinished business committee of the whole, review the land maintenance bylaw.
Be number 2.
Yep.
Land maintenance bylaw. Okay, any disclosure of interest this evening? No delegations this evening. So we'll move to resolution number 156-20, moved by Councillor Morrow, seconded by Councillor McGrath, that the minutes of the council and committee of the whole meeting held May 26, 2020 be accepted as circulated. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Yes.
Resolution number 157-20, moved by Councillor Morrow, seconded by Councillor Mullins, that council approve the quotation from Strongco in the amount of $3,400.18, excluding applicable taxes for a gear shifter for the grader. All those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Carried. Resolution number 158-20, moved by Councillor Mullins, seconded by Councillor Morrow, that the council of the Township of Schreiber support the resolution of the Township of Armour supporting Councillor Rod Ward's letter regarding high-speed connectivity in rural Ontario. All those in favor? Thank you.
Okay.
Carried. Resolution number 159-20, moved by Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Morrow, that bank debits paid out of the general bank account in the month of April 2020 in the amount of $32,309.82 be approved and ratified. All those in favor?
In favor.
Thank you. Carried. Resolution number 160-20, moved by Councillor Morrow, seconded by Councillor McGrath, that checks issued on the general bank account in the month of May 2020 in the amount of $123,764.69 for general accounts payable be approved and ratified. All those in favor?
In favor.
Thank you. Carried. Resolution number 161-20, moved by Councillor Mullins, seconded by Councillor Morrow, that bank debits issued on the general bank account in the month of May 2020 in the amount of $47,460.29 for payroll be approved and ratified. All those in favor?
In favor.
Thank you. Carried. Resolution number 162-20, moved by Councilor Morrow, seconded by Councilor Mullins, that bylaw 22-2020, being a bylaw authorizing the execution of a consulting agreement between the Township of Schreiber and Precambrian Natural Surface Trails Incorporated, be given first, second, third, and final reading and enacted. All those in favor?
In favor.
Carried, thank you. Alrighty, so that brings us to a close our council portion of the meeting. We move into the committee of the whole. Department reports and committee board reports. First one up is treasurer report for 2019 year end and 2020 budget update.
You need one up here, and I can go back there.
Oh.
You're good.
So this report is done to give council an update on the status of where we are with 2019 year-end financial statements as well as the 2020 budget. So staff continue to work on finalizing our 2019 year-end. We are somewhat later than normally, mostly due to COVID and the implications of that. We did have we had a transition year in 2019 as well, so the staff that are here right now are trying to make sure that we are finalizing your capital projects as they should be. For the 2020 budget, the majority of the departments have been presented to council. Again, we're just waiting on the final numbers for 2019. The expectation in all likelihood would be that the bylaw itself, because in addition to finalizing your year-end and presenting the budget to council, there's still notice periods in order to pass your bylaws and stuff like that. So the end date is to have it done by the end of July. So in the report I have had that I had notification, I've been participating on MFOA webinars on a regular weekly basis. They had indicated that the deadline for filing the FIR had been extended, and that the province had said that. Now I was talking to our ministry representative from Municipal Affairs, and they have said that they didn't get that notification. So, but in any event, the normal deadline for the FIR is May the 31st. There is no real impact to a municipality in missing the deadline. We've missed it one other time when we were doing our tangible capital asset. The September 30th is the deadline at this point, that if municipalities don't have the FIR filed with the ministry by that, then your fourth quarter OMPF funding could be in jeopardy. But there's neither myself nor our auditors see that there's any kind of a problem with filing long before September the 30th. So it's very likely that you'll see an email come through so that we can schedule probably a special council meeting to go over the final capital fund stuff for 19 and the 2020 budget. And that likely won't take place until the week of the 22nd, just to give you a heads up, and then as needed thereafter.
Any questions for our treasurer?
Not the 24th.
Not the 24th.
If you're thinking.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. Thank you, I appreciate that.
That works for me too, because that's when I got my next doctor's appointment by phone.
Okay.
Okay, then we'll move on to second item, the impact of COVID-19 on municipal operations. An update, Nathan?
This is just,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Arlene.
Sorry.
Arlene?
I'm sorry. Was done to let you know how things are happening with the municipal office. The last report on it was done in, much earlier in the, declaration of the pandemic and what processes were playing, what were happening. So the office, as all departments, have been closed to the public, since the 17th of March. At that point in time, the major function that was identified that was going to be the biggest impact was the payment of property taxes or utility bills or any miscellaneous. I have to give kudos to our staff as well as all of our rate players, because everybody has adapted very well, I would say, to the limitations that are out there for everybody across Canada. We are accepting payments by electronic means, which is telephone, online, and mobile banking, in person at the customer's financial institution, and through the mail by check, bank draft, or money order. And there's the numbers posted on the door. The biggest example that I would say that everything is still really going as status quo was that the second quarterly water and sewer billing went out in April and was due at the end of April. That is about approximately 450 water bills that go out. When it was time to do the disconnections, we had 27 properties that were eligible. We did take the extra step, and anybody that we had contact information for, we did reach out to them, even though it is their responsibility technically to call the office. But we did that, and it ended up that we had only one disconnect because the numbers that we had for that property were all not in service, and the email address bounced back. So to me, I say that is, like I said, a great success to our staff and our ratepayers, because that's really awesome. So we continue to keep our physical distancing in place, and we're fortunate enough we have a large building in here, and again are helping the public out in any way that we can when they leave a message or send an email. And yeah, kudos to everybody, I say.
That's good.
Job well done.
Good news.
Is there a plan being developed for the eventual reopening of the office?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That has to be passed by the Ministry of Health or the
Labor.
Labor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we're working on that.
Sounds good.
Okay, number 3 then, request from J.E. Stokes Medical Center.
So that's my report as well.
You're busy
and
tonight.
The recommendation is to continue a status quo. So the request that came in is from the medical center that they do rent space from the municipality, and they have indicated that they are experiencing some cash flow problems due to the COVID experience, as well as other capital projects that they had to do in their previous fiscal year. So they were requesting that the township not invoice their rental payments for 3 months. I did have a second request that they had was that the township covered the purchase, the supply and installation of the plexiglass wellness barrier for their front reception counter. During my conversation with the office manager, I explained that council would not be able to not charge for one tenant and charge the other tenants, and that at the end of the day, we're not going to go after them through small claims court like our policy would be for missed rental payments, and that, you know, we are understanding the amount of the interest over the 3 months is less than $170, so really immaterial in the grand scheme that was for them, right? They were fairly confident that they would be receiving their payments from the ministry, because I guess there's a slowdown for some reason with their payments that they receive. The medical center has continued to accept appointments and provide services to their patients throughout all of this. What I did suggest to them, first of all, go back to there may be some misinformation for tenants thinking that they will get the the rental subsidy, but the problem, because there is a program out there for commercial landlords that they can apply for a subsidy, but municipalities are exempt from that program, so we can't offer that. So, so again, what I had, in discussions with other staff members, as well, we did discuss, I did suggest to the office manager there that they contact their financial institution, because there are programs available for businesses through their banking institution for loans that potentially, right, can be forgivable. And I don't know all of the details, but I believe it's up to $40,000, and as long as you pay it back by December the 31st, 2021, and if you pay it all back, part of it is forgiven as a grant. So I think anyone who is a business should be looking into that and talking with their financial planner to see whether that's something that they should be accessing. I do know that there are businesses in town that have done that, and been successful on that. So I did suggest that they look at that as a first option as well. The cost for the wellness barriers, and my suggestion is that we do pay for the supply and installation of the wellness barriers for the front reception counters only. It would be up to each individual employer to make sure that their staff is really protected and has the proper mechanisms, and I'm sure that they do that inside the offices and stuff like that. But when in discussions with our staff, it's approximately $2,200 to have the wellness screens done. And there is the potential, although it's not really guaranteed, municipalities are tracking all COVID-related expenses, because we do have other associations that are lobbying the other levels of government, the provincial government, the federal government, to say that, you know what, you need to provide some kind of financial relief to municipalities, because this is over and above anything that we would be normally budgeting for. So the suggestion was that it would be more beneficial, really, that we go ahead and put in those things, because we may be able to access that other government funding.
Yeah.
Now, I do believe that there was an announcement that the feds were going to be flowing $14 billion to the provinces. How that's going to happen, none of the details on that have been released, or we don't know what that type of application process is going to be. I also do recall that there was something that Premier Ford was saying that Ontario needs $23 billion. So again, who knows what's going to happen, but I think it's at least the positive thing is that there is the dialogue that's going on out there at the other levels, and you can't open for business without that barrier in place, regardless of who you are, right? And I think it's going to, really and truly, it's going to be the norm, even if COVID disappears and all of that kind of stuff. I think it really is going to be the norm, that there is going to be that barrier between, you know, employer and
the ones we've looked at
customer.
are gonna be permanent, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not plexiglass, it's gonna be a permanent barrier there.
Mm-hmm.
It's for us specifically.
Yes, for us
Yeah.
specifically. Because, I mean, even when and if this is all over, we're still gonna have cold and flu season, so.
Yeah.
You know,
Makes sense.
yeah. Okay, any questions for Marlene?
Well, that sounds fine.
Okay, then we'll take a deep breath and go to number 4, Marlene. 2020 tax ratio analysis?
Yes, so this is an annual exercise that that is done, because it really is the basis for understanding what a municipality has as their starting point for their revenue. And so what the recommendation that is going forward is that the township adopt the 2020 tax ratios using the 2019 adopted ratios. So it is MPAC's task to provide assessment to all municipalities in Ontario, and they do that. They prepare the roll, so we would receive the assessment roll for 2020 taxation in December of 2019. And we have to calculate what our revenue limit is for 2020 when you're basing a levy increase. You need to know where you're starting with and what that starting rate is, and basically they would take the 2019, the least roll, and then all of the changes that happened in 2019 to come up with that revenue, what your year-end kind of revenue limit is, which is your starting limit for 2020. So what that first table is telling you, is showing you the year-end adjustments due to the rates, due to annualized changes, because your changes can happen mid-year, but in order to find out what your limit is for the year, you have to calculate it over the same year. So what this is saying is that there basically was a 6.4% decrease in the rate to start off with. The distribution of the taxes are going from commercial and multi-res onto your residential class.
So this change in the general levy rates from, well, like I'll just take residential for an example, the actual 0.043 and so on, and then looks like it's reduced here to 0.0410.
Right.
That's because the assessed values of the property in town
Changed. So we may have
changed, right?
added assessment, right? Somebody may have built something, whatever
Yeah.
you may have building, or you could have had class changes that happened in there.
Yeah.
So it went from one class to the other. So the overall
Right.
calculation are basically lower rates starting out for 2020 than you actually passed for 2019.
So obviously somewhere along the line, somebody's property went up to
Yeah.
reduce this rate.
Yeah, or there could be a change in the use of the property from one to the other.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I would say there's a lot in the report, but really and truly, it's to note that your residential tax class bears the majority of your tax burden at almost 73% for the 2020 taxation year. The table 15 is a summary of, because you're limited, right, how you calculate ratios and tax rates and stuff like that you're limited by provincial policy. And so we have different ranges of fairness, and in 2009, I think it was, I'm looking for it in here. Yeah, 2009, council manually reduced the commercial ratio to 1.98 where it stays today, because prior to that, we were above the provincial threshold, which meant if you were putting, for example, a 3% levy increase through and your commercial ratio was above the 1.98, your commercial class, instead of getting the 3% increase, they would only get they'd get only 50% of that, so 1.5%, and then the rest of your classes had to take their 3% and they had to also distribute that 1.5% from the commercial rate. So part of the policy, or what the goal, the direction that the province was saying, was that they were giving more autonomy to each local municipality to determine how they wanted that share, but the whole purpose of it was to make sure that each class was paying its fair share. Okay, so in 2009 we did that, and we've stayed at those ratios since then. Table 16 is illustrating what would happen if you reduce the commercial ratio by 5% with no increase to your budgeted amount for 2020. So under that scenario, your tax burden is shifted from the commercial class onto the residential class, almost in the amount of $25,000. So which would be very, very significant, right, before you even put an increase through.
Why would it not shift onto the industrial class, some of that tax burden?
Well, the majority of it goes onto the residential. Your industrial class, we only have industrial, we have one, I think it's only one property in industrial, and that's a payment in lieu, and you have to remember payment in lieu. The province doesn't necessarily pay you what is actually the assessment times the tax rate, because they have their own formula on how they calculate what they pay as a payment in lieu property.
So in the range of fairness table 15, it shows the commercial class is at the threshold,
That's right,
and in residential, well, residential
is always one.
is always one, but industrial is below the threshold at
Yes.
2.63.
Yes. 'Cause
So
we
how
don't-
do you figure that out, that commercial is so high, and then, for instance, I mean, I understand what you're saying, industrial, there's not a lot of industrial here, but why is their ratio so far below their threshold in comparison to commercial? Like their threshold is 2.6.
I think part of it had to do with it has to do with how it came, how that, like in the years before 2009, how the formula automatically ratcheted the ratio down as a starting ratio. And how that's calculated, I can tell you that I would not be able to explain it to you here off the top of my head. 'Cause
So it's not done locally,
there's a formula and a calculation on how you do that, and it depends on assessment. And like I said, under
Okay.
the normal taxation class, we don't have an industrial tax base.
Right.
And we did not have an industrial payment in lieu at the end in 2019. Why that property changed, I have that question out to MPAC to say, why did you change the tax class on it? Because I don't know what triggered the change in there. So I'm waiting to find that out. I'm thinking likely it's gonna have an in-year change again to something else is my guess. But I do not know that for certain. So
Okay.
if you look at the financial impact, what I've done is, taken our actual passed by bylaw tax rates, with various scenarios to let you know what those scenarios will produce as a tax rate. So for 2020, your average single detached residential property has a CVA of 51,000, just over 51,000. So if the tax ratios for 2020 remain at 2019 and you have a levy increase of 6%, and I'm not saying that you're having 6%, I'm just saying if you do the 6%, you're still going to end up with a decrease in the rate.
I couldn't hear a squeak bugger all the last 15 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
It's funny.
It must be the conference phone must only pick up audio from a certain distance.
So yeah, so the recommendation stands as is that we keep the ratios where we are. You finish, so in the example, here again, if you did a 6% levy increase, your rate is still gonna be less than what it was as a 2019 tax rate. So that average residential property owner, where they're not seeing any kind of an increase in their assessment, will pay $17.60 less on their tax bill. So that's a good news story.
But we don't have the new 4-year cycle yet.
That is correct. And so what has happened with that, with the emergency orders, is that where we should be for the 2021 taxation year, we should be seeing a new 4-year cycle starting that would be based on January 1, 2019. But the province has come back and said, we will be continuing with the valuation date as we did for 2020 in the 2021 cycle. Now, what they're going to do for 2022 is yet to be determined, because who knows what their options are. I don't know whether they're thinking about that yet or not, about what's going on. Because you may recall it used to be a 3-year cycle that we did, and they moved it to a 4-year cycle a number of years ago. But for 2021, we will be using the same valuation date. Not we, MPAC will be using the same valuation date. They will be updating those little changes that happened throughout the year of 2020 as they did for 2019, but the valuation date remains the same as it did for 2020.
Okay. Thanks, Marlene. Any questions for her? Then we'll move on to number 5 then, our Director of Operations and the soda ash pump.
There's of course the recommendation here that to purchase one new soda ash pump for a cost of $9,000 to replace the old pump.
Any questions on that? Everybody agreement with that then, to purchase the new pump?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead with that. Number 6, community economic development.
So the good news here is that we finally ended up getting this rural economic development grant. This is something that we were applying to, I think, over the years, and found one way or another to reject our applications. So finally got it, but not at a 50-50 ratio. It was at a 3-7 ratio. So, you know, that's something to consider. With this project that we put forward, this is again, the whole gist of the project, just as a reminder here, is the economic development spin that we put to it is that we're going to replicate artwork of local artists, and we'll put it out on aluminum dye bond. That's the same material as the existing street signage that we have, and we bolt it directly onto facades for property, whether it's public or private property throughout the township. And that way we would be able to showcase the local talent of artists that we have, as well as even maybe do some copies of the murals and all that we have here as well. So the aim for this was about doing 10 of these street murals. The budget that we put in for the project was an overall total budget of about 10 grand. So if this was at a 7-to-3 ratio, we would have to put in the investment of $7,000 to leverage $3,000 from the province. So the confirmation I'll need from council is what is the total amount of money that you're willing to put into this program, and if you're choosing to invest in this project, which capital year would you want this to be done in, either this year or next year? And I'll have to respond to the program coordinator within this month with the answers.
I don't know if I can find it that quick. The deadline.
Yep.
The deadline's like
June 25th to have a response.
that's just to have a response.
Yep.
But then, without finding it, it was July 27th to be finished or something.
That's the current project timelines that we put in, so the project timelines will have to be altered, especially now.
Okay, but we can,
Yep, we should be able to, yep.
because we haven't even talked to
The artists.
our artists.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know, we've been working on this, like you said, and getting rejected, but if the only thing that was throwing at me was the deadline, but if that can be moved, I don't have a problem with it.
Yep, that should be able to be moved.
Some money there? Or where would the 7 that we put in come from?
Well, we're gonna have to find that. Well, I mean, we're gonna have to look for it. I'm not saying we're gonna have to find it. Hopefully we can find it. That's,
Well, I guess that's the question. Are you in agreement that we should put out the 7,000 and get 3 from the government? And then probably put it on next year's capital, right?
Yeah, there is flexibility. If you wanna, you know, of course, the question is if you wanna, first of all, say yes to this, and what I'll try to do is maybe put the start date, if you don't wanna put it this year, maybe into next year. That is a thing to do, and it's also how many murals do you want, right? If you wanna reduce the total number of murals, we could go with a smaller investment to, if we put everything in half, we can get about 1,500 from them at that ratio. Where instead of the 7,000, right, we'll go with 3,500. You reduce it to half. So there's that kind of flexibility.
How much does one of these murals cost? Do you know?
Trying to remember there, I think it
Yeah,
was.
it's been a bit, I think to transfer one over was gonna cost about $400 or $500 or something like that.
Something like that.
I'm not quite,
Plus
Right.
paying the artist. Is it like a donation type of thing? Like,
No,
hey, we're
it-
gonna advertise for you. so
In
maybe-
terms of the artists, like,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be, paying them anything. It's more or less that we are
Yeah, that's what I'm.
advertising for
yeah,
them,
That's
but-
what I'm getting at. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna pay to advertise. that.
Yeah,
We are.
that's
Yeah.
what I was wondering. I thought-
we haven't, yeah, we haven't really stepped up and talked. I mean, we talked to a couple of them and they said, yeah, it sounds interesting, but that's as far as it's gone. I don't know, and I don't know how you do it. My take on it is taking, what I was pushing for was the two school ones that we already have done and put the Catholic one over at the Catholic school, of course with permission, and the public school over at the public school. I was hoping to do that with this year's Heritage Days, which is not happening. So, like, I mean, if everybody's in favor of this and then work out a budget, work out something with a couple of the artists and whatnot, and we'll see what we can come up with and do it next year's. Like, do the art, but get it out there in next year, before Heritage Days.
Was everybody fine with that?
Yeah, I'm good with next year.
Okay. What about the money? Good with the 7 and 3?
Well,
I
we,
just feel like
we can,
needs to be more of a plan. Like, shouldn't the downtown area be done so you can properly
Yeah.
put the signs where they're
Yeah.
make sense of where they're going? Like, oh, let's put a sign here. Oh, wait, now we gotta move it because we're building something here.
no, I mean, I don't think it was ever gonna be like that, but,
No, I'm just like,
yeah.
I don't think we need to jump on this is kind of what I'm getting at. As like a,
Are we gonna have enough artists buy-in to produce 10?
do we have space for 10?
Well, I don't know if we would, I don't know if we would do 10 or, like,
Should we do less then?
well, that's what I'm saying, and, I mean, as long as we're okay with doing some, we could, like Dominic will have a better plan, but talk to a few artists and see where they are with it then and go from there.
But do we have to have an answer back to them by June?
June 25th, so I'll need, the answer now. I mean, the main thing is, whether it's, yes or no for the grant itself. And that being said, a general rule is you can ask for more. But if you don't spend the whole thing, you can, that was always fine. But if you ask for less, then they wouldn't give you any more. It's just something to consider.
The other thing is if they give us, if it's being offered now,
Yep.
and we don't take it, then
Mhm.
that's probably not a good thing either.
I'll definitely be checking with the program coordinators there to see what kind of flexibility we'd have. But
Right.
the main thing is, at least at this stage, to see if we're interested in it. And as we, discuss the capital budget this year, it could be something to revisit. But I think overall, everyone is okay with the idea for this project.
Yep.
There's still, some questions with regards to what will be the
Yeah.
total financial commitment. And once we know that, then we'd be able to scale that to how many signs we can
Yeah,
get.
I think it's in line with the other projects we have on the go.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, me and Dominic talked about it for the last 2 years, really. He got, I think it was the day before he left or whatever, he says, you know what, that red grant, you remember that red grant? That's all. Yeah, he says, well, we got 70-30. I think he jumped on the bus and took off.
Right.
So, you know,
The whole idea of this really stemmed out of, there was this idea to have the murals which we have in the gymnasium
Yeah,
put out throughout the street. And part of that was, like the whole discussion all came through, and at the end, we ended up putting it in the gymnasium. But some people wanted some murals out on the street, and we said, the best way to do this is just get a copy of these murals, put them on die bond. But now the trick was to get the funding. So in order to get the funding, we had to tie it into how are we going to promote economic development in the committee, and that's where the local artists were involved.
yeah.
pretty much, yeah.
Okay, everybody fine with that?
Yep.
Okay, and we'll move on to the Economic Development Discovery Center Interpretive Planning and Design Award Contract.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns with the interpretive design contract?
Are these, is this group, what have they done in the past? Have they been successful in this type of thing in the past?
Yes, yeah. All the bidders that we have, at least the 4 that decided to put a bid, were all highly recommended.
Okay.
Really, we could have gone with, any. A major thing about this company is that they're also doing work for Parks Canada nearby in our area.
Okay.
And what we believed was that they would be able to really leverage all those local ties in doing that other project. And that was, an important factor when considering, this company. So if the contract is fine, and next step would be that we would pass the bylaw in order to confirm it.
Everybody fine with that then?
I think so.
Okay, very good. Next up is the building permit and demolition report for May. Any questions on that? Okay, then we'll move on to the senior program coordinator report. And we have a recommendation for, to add 2 people to the senior center committee.
So yes, the recommendation is to approve Kathy Coyle and Ted Jordan as members of the Schreiber Senior Center Committee.
Everybody all right with that?
Yeah, I think so, and we're gonna get a male presence on our committee,
Yeah.
which is, we've been looking for some time.
Yeah,
Excellent.
very good. Okay, well, welcome to the committee. Next up is the bylaw enforcement report. Any questions on that? Okay. Then our fire department activity report for April. I see the chief here with us. Anybody have any questions for him?
Did you get a price on that door?
Was that the overhead door or
Yeah,
the
the one there, the overhead door at 211.
I believe the quote we got last year from the door place in Thunder Bay was $5,600. That's for a brand new door, track, the whole works.
211, is that the old fire hall?
That's the old fire hall, yeah. Fortunately, the door there is it's even beyond opening now. The rollers and the tracks are broken.
It was beyond opening when I was working there.
Yeah, it was installed in 1971. We've actually got the original invoice, so
yeah.
it certainly doesn't owe anybody anything, but it's.
Sorry, what was the price, Jan, for the?
In 1971, I'm not sure.
No.
but-
For the new
but-
one?
But this year, it would be 5,600
Installed?
installed, yeah.
Manual?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions there?
No?
Then we have the three reports on our wastewater and water treatment plant. Any questions on those?
I just have one on the wastewater.
Sure.
The electrical, there was some electrical work done there at the plant.
This is with the work order summary?
Yeah. That was in the clarifier building.
I know in our last, it was identified that there was electrical problems there, so.
Mhm.
Is that, have they all been repaired then after this? work?
No, like, really the whole thing, all the electrical there needs to be fully kind of gutted and
Okay.
replaced. It's in,
So this is just part of that process then?
I'll ask Red to clarify for
Yeah.
that and get back to you with regards to that particular work order there.
Yeah.
But it has, ongoing issues. It's
Okay, so-
eroded pretty badly.
Yeah, a lot of it, eh?
Yep.
Well, there again, it's original too, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, then, I guess we move on to question period. Are there any questions?
I received, looks like no further questions or emails, so again, if anyone has questions, email it to info@schreiber.ca.
Okay, then we have, next up is communications. Anything to cover under that? Anything?
Very few communications this time.
Yeah.
I just have one question, and it's because I don't know anything, but under the DSA board meeting minutes, it was talking about a levy. There was on page 3 of 7, they were talking about the disposition of the 2019 program levy operating surplus for consideration. Now,
Does that have anything to do with the municipal levy, or like there was a surplus of
$208,000, and the option was to return this levy. So that's, I was just kind of wondering what that actually meant, or does that have anything to do with municipalities? Anybody?
I would assume that it does, but,
It did, they did
Yeah.
adjust one of their monthly invoices, I think it may have been the May monthly invoice, but they did, it was not really material in nature as it filtered down through all of the
Okay.
municipalities that are within the board.
Okay.
I can find that out and send you guys an email what it was,
Sure.
but it was,
Okay, just curious about.
don't be spending anything, don't be getting any ideas.
Oh.
I would say.
I'll let that go on.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
okay, thank you for that. Okay, then we're going down to finished business and Canada Summer Jobs 2020 update.
So, what you see here is just the response from the program. And my response then back to the program. I was quite surprised to see that they haven't, that they did not accept our application, right? And that does mean that we have to now, as a backup for Plan B, look into budgeting summer students on our own budget, and something to keep into consideration. Ultimately, what you saw there is my response again back to the program coordinators and to our federal MP office in order to just provide some awareness with regards to this grant, and in order to let them know that we would be interested if there was any extra funding that's remaining, because that was part of the criteria for looking into the follow-up for that notice that they sent out. So I'm crossing my fingers at this point, and hopefully they'll let us know sometime soon. But otherwise, we do have a plan B in place with regards to putting some students on our budget, and that's something that we'll finalize soon, should we not hear back from this program.
Did we get a lot of applications? Did we get a few
Yes, we did.
applications?
We did
Okay.
get a lot of applications, so again, this was kind of disappointing news, and for anyone who's following, it doesn't necessarily mean no. It's, again, we are looking at our capacity for seeing how many students we can fit in our budget. So.
Okay.
Were
Yeah, I
you able
think-
to hear anything back from the MP's office? I don't know if they
No.
got back to you.
No, they haven't got back to me yet.
I didn't hear back, and they are looking into it, so.
I think, not that every year is not a exceptional year to hire students, but this year is going to be
Yeah.
really exceptional in hiring.
This is the first year that we've never.
Yeah,
In 15 years.
I find that hard to believe,
Yeah.
especially with what's going on with
Exactly.
COVID.
So we hope that they will, get back to us with some good news.
Hopefully as soon as possible, because, again, we have a lot of applicants waiting, so, and we want to hear some good news.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, then I guess we're into the land maintenance bylaw.
Right. So again, there are just a few updates with this. The main thing with the land maintenance bylaw here is the main thing is to look at it, again, the fines at the back of the bylaw and review that. I need to know if council is okay with the amounts that we're gonna put for the set fines. Again, these fines will have to be registered with the courts. So.
Is everybody fine with the fines, the amounts of the fines?
Well, what's an example?
An example, I'll read out one. So here's a good example of one. Permit the growth of grass and weeds to exceed 20 centimeters in height. This is for people who choose not to maintain lawns, and the fine for that would be $100. And in general, the list there, is a consultant put it with regard to what's considered fair, and it's something to keep in mind that anything that is too high, the courts will not accept. They want to see that the fine that is issued is something that is appropriate with the offense that's being caused. So going through, again, this bylaw again, it's broken down really simple. Again, you have the general littering and dumping, and that has a fine of $150. If you're looking at major dumping, where you're not dropping, one thing, but substantial amounts of waste being dropped, that could go up to a $400 fine. There's the yard and lawn maintenance, and again, that's with regards to the growth of grass or weeds, and that is exceeding 20 centimeters in height, that is a $100 fine. There's the inoperative motor vehicle storage, and that is actually $400 fine. An important thing to talk about with regards to, this is number 7 on the list here, is to determine what number of vehicles council is fine with regards to inoperative motor vehicles on yards. I know if there's any confusion out there at home, if you have a licensed vehicle, you can have as many licensed vehicles parked on your property. Inoperative motor vehicles refer to vehicles that don't have license plates on them. Or the definition here that we go into, an inoperative motor vehicle means a motor vehicle which is not operative or which is not currently licensed pursuant to the provisions of the Highway Traffic Act and the amendments thereto, or a motor vehicle which has had part or all of its superstructure or motor power removed. So right there, what you see in that section there is allowing, right now, and what's written there, allowing 2 inoperative motor vehicles as long as they're covered in tarp. What are your thoughts on that?
This $400 fine you mentioned, is that, how often does that, do you do that?
It would work in a process. Of course, with regards to any sort of bylaw, the main thing is to work with people in order to get it, compliant. But again, the typical process would be where we would give a notice saying that, this is the violation, give an appropriate amount of time for people to respond to it. So supposing if it was this inoperative motor vehicle, let's just say we would put the order to comply, and we'll say this is what you need to do in order to comply with the bylaw. This is the bylaw section which is in violation. This is what you need to do to comply. You need to remove this vehicle, and we'd give them, let's say, about 30 days in order to do that. And once the 30 days are done, the bylaw officer would then visit the property and check at that time to see if the vehicle is still there. And at that point, if the vehicle is still there, right, we could then issue the fine, or we could then issue the work order, and the work order would be essentially getting a contractor or our own staff to move this vehicle or tow this vehicle, and at that point, we would issue that that cost as a lien onto the property.
So it would probably be cheaper to pay the fine, in most cases.
Yeah, I mean, in most cases, with regards to this, it's, the fine is there as, again, as a deterrent, in
Right.
order to, you have the notice, please clear it up. But again, the fine isn't going to clear up that property. Should we need to ensure that, we want that property cleared up, that's when we can do the work order and say, basically we're giving a notice that's saying you'll be fined, or we will clean up the property ourselves.
Yeah, you can't.
Can't do both.
I know what Dan is saying there, but it's, we want people to comply. We don't want people to pay fines.
Yep.
First and foremost, we want people to comply with
Exactly.
it. And we want the town to start, like Nathan says, if they go back there after 30 days and it's a $400 fine, and then put a work order out to get it moved. Like, you're not gonna be able to pay the fine and not get it moved. It's going to get moved.
And I think it's important to understand that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. The consultant has given us the fines that are applicable, and this is to a lot of municipalities. It's nothing, we're not doing anything different than a lot of other municipalities are already doing. It's just our bylaw didn't really have any teeth to it. So we're just trying to upgrade our bylaws to match what other municipalities are doing. And there again, it's not like picking on anybody. We just, you know, we're hoping that, we don't wanna fine anybody. We would just like you to comply, that's all, and if you don't, now we have a recourse.
Yeah, I hope we don't collect 1 red cent from this.
No, I hope not either, that's not the intent of this at all.
Really, the vision of this bylaw is a process in order to bring about that vision of a clean and clear community. You know, that's where it's, that's the goal of what it's attempting to do here. Then again, when it comes to balance, right, that's something where I just wanted to get the, you know, opinion from council with regards to now this 2 inoperative motor vehicles of the TARP. Because I've heard from some people, they said, why are we gonna cover it with the TARP, right? The TARP may look uglier than the inoperative vehicles. And then the discussion is 2 motor vehicles too much, inoperative motor vehicles? Or is 1 inoperative motor vehicle better, or is none the best? So
Is this,
that's.
is this on a property with a dwelling?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is on a property with the dwelling.
There's 0 on vacant.
There's 0, that's correct, on vacant property. And of course, there is absolutely no issue if it's ever put in a garage.
Yeah.
If it's in a garage, it's in a garage.
So is everybody fine with this bylaw then? Do we feel we
So you need to know like
Well,
one
I need to
vehicle,
know-
2 vehicles?
I need to know about the inoperative vehicles, whether
0,
their
1?
stance 0, 1, 2.
I would give them 1.
Think
On
it's-
a-
Yeah, I would agree with that. If-
On a, or a dwelling, primary
Yeah.
building, 0 on a
Yes,
vacant
that-
land,
that
which,
one-
well, it's explained there, yeah.
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 Yeah,
But I
sure.
would give them 1 on a,
Primary residence. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, many times you're in the transition,
Yeah.
getting rid of 1 vehicle and buying another one, and you may have it on your property for a bit. You don't wanna you don't wanna pay insurance or licensing, so I would agree with
Is
you.
everybody fine with that?
Yeah, sure.
1 vehicle then?
One vehicle.
Okay.
And with regards to
With
the
or without the tarp.
Yeah.
I can tell you,
It's a pretty ugly tarp.
I'd rather not see tarps flapping in the wind, to
Yeah,
be honest.
Exactly, I'd say no tarps.
And
because
tarps-
we'd rather keep it at, you know,
Yeah.
just checking for the vehicles,
Yeah.
but if we have to now go around checking for the tarp
Yeah.
condition, that's another
Tarp would be
level of
worse to
complexity.
do.
Yeah, when tarp starts to deteriorate, they make a real mess, because it's flying all over the place.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so that's that section. Then, of course, the next one there is the grading and filling of land. And this section is again talking about having big potholes or something in your property. Again, and there's a fine for 200 for that. And that's really it. We made it really simple with regards to it. You know, really the first one, the littering and dumping, covers a lot of ground, especially if you look at, you know, what's considered waste material, and that includes then, you know, the section there for animal defecation and all is considered as part of the littering in that section there as well. So does it make sense?
I think it makes total sense, and it's pretty, I think it's pretty clear.
It's pretty
I think we got to make the bylaw accessible to the public after, of course, after we get it, we gotta accept it, and then it's gotta go away and get, the fines part of it's gotta get accepted, and then I think it's about time.
Is everybody fine with this bylaw amendments then, as
Yes.
and explain them to us?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Dave?
Yeah, no, good.
Doug? Yeah. Okay. Then we will move on with, move ahead with that. And then I guess the last thing up is the complaint letter that we received. Did everybody,
No.
That
That's
was-
in the
that was
same
part of
thing.
that was all part of it? Okay.
Yeah.
That was part of the.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody did get a chance to read it though?
And I think again, if we pass this bylaw, right, that will take care of, for those who have, major concerns over this, what do you say, a lot of junk stored on people's property, this bylaw will be able to address that and have a very effective method in resolving that.
Yeah.
Okay, then, I guess next up, we'll go into the appointment of a member to the beautification committee.
Okay, we have a person that's put their name in and signed the form and everything. And actually, they had put their name forward last fall, and seeing they were going away for the winter, I told her not to put her name in until the spring. And so when she came back this year, we asked her if she still wanted to join the beautification committee, and she said by all means. So we got the form and she signed up and everything now. So where we go from here, I hope we can accept her. And everyone's itching to get going on the committee. So it's Paula Hiller.
Everybody fine with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't the committee just handle that on their own, as opposed to council having to be involved?
Well, when you get somebody new on a committee, you gotta go through council.
You do?
Yeah,
It's just a part of
it's
the,
just
because the councils are basically putting forward, right, the committees are putting forward, recommendations to council, and ultimately it comes down to, there's ultimately gonna be limited spots. So you wanna make sure that it's a process, there's some process in place in which someone has the ability to determine who's best suited for being on these committees. So in this case, it would be council. So if you get one, committee where there are a lot of applicants, at least there's a way for council to determine and choose who's best suited for that.
Well, maybe I'm getting off track a bit, but if the beautification committee, and I was there last year, but if they came along with someone and council was to say to turn that down, well, you can imagine the furor of that, which hasn't happened and will not happen, but that's kind of why I've asked the question. I mean, why not let the beautification committee handle their own affairs? Like, why do we have to say yes or no? We're not gonna say no. Of course, we're gonna say yes, but I don't know.
I don't know, I think it's just keeping council up to snuff with it.
They
And
are
it's-
called
alternate-
committees of council, are they not?
Yeah.
Committees of council, so.
Yeah, sure,
And
okay, I
it's-
get that.
It's ultimately, again, part of the democratic process, because the way it should work, right, the committees should be making recommendations to council, and that gives them a bit of a political leverage. So
Right.
ultimately, the process here is, if council is appointing whoever it is on these committees, you're getting democracy working in the sense that the public has chosen the councillors, and in this case, the councillors representing the public choose the people on the committee. If you see it in that perspective, it's a bit of politics, so.
And since we're on the beautification committee, thank you. Since we're on the beautification committee, I'll just give you a quick update. We got all the flowers. We got them Sunday. We're waiting for this big rainstorm or whatever to get by tomorrow, and we're gonna get out there by the weekend. I've talked to Dave and Nathan, and just to let you guys know that we're, the bigger planters, we're hoping to move 2 of them over by Mike King, the sign on Mike King's lawn there, the big sign. So we're gonna give them big planters.
By the funeral home?
I talked to him, we have his permission. If we can get the dead tree out of the other one, we may move it over to the directional sign in front of by Shakey's in the empty lot there. And there's an octagon planter out here behind the fuel tank at the town office. We want to move it to the front of the town office. And we'll get the flowers put in it too, but wherever there was flowers last year, there's going to be flowers again this year. Yeah, we're ready to go, so.
I'll have to get my water cans out again.
You gotta get your water can, the two down at the beach are on the list.
Okay. Dust them off.
We'll get them planted, you just get the water, and if you notice, they were cleaned out the other day.
Yeah, I did notice that, yeah.
Me and the wife
Yeah.
social distance, then.
They looked really good down there last year.
Yeah, they did, yes, well, that's very good, Mooney.
Yeah,
Awesome.
good work.
Okay.
People are looking forward to it, I know they are.
Well, I know the beautification,
Yeah.
they're chomping at the bit to get out there and do it, but,
Yeah.
I mean, why do it when we got the weather coming tomorrow?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
And,
Well, very good. Okay, thank you. Well, then, I guess that is it for tonight's meeting. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And at this time, we'll go into resolution number 163-20, moved by Councillor Morrow, seconded by Councillor Mullins, that the closed meeting resume at this time. All in favor? Carried, thank you.